Good afternoon, MACPA. I see that number of participants climbing up or jumping up pretty dramatically. And I know you maybe are still connecting to audio, so I'll give it a second. Just want to welcome everyone to our August town hall. Thank you for joining us on this August Monday afternoon. Hopefully you've had a great morning and didn't have too much flooding last night. Those storms were pretty incredible here in Maryland, or at least in northern Baltimore County where I am. Grateful to have you with us. We're going to go ahead and get started. Always like to start with acknowledging my bosses, the MACPA Board of Directors, that we are so grateful to have their leadership and their influence and support. Our chair, Tom White, in his second month as MACPA chair, and just this amazing group of leaders that we are fortunate to have in Maryland. We're going to do some of our polls that we love to do to see who we have today on our town hall. So we had about 360 or so registered. Of course, we know not everybody can always make it, but if you want to go ahead and click on the link to start answering some of the polls or use that QR code, you could also just type in macpa.cnf.io into a browser and click on the town hall link and you'll see these polls there as well. As I go through the slides to show the live polling results, they'll lock the polls. So if you see a bunch now and I'm about to click on it and they all go away, don't worry, I'll unlock them back all up. So our first poll that we like to start with is sharing good news, especially sometimes on a Monday. You need some good news to excite you about the week. Looks like somebody got two new kittens creating havoc. That's awesome. Two cute little kittens, I'm sure, and I'm sure, creating a little havoc, but also a joy to have. Someone bought an RV, someone's going to Aruba, I assume, or went to Aruba, planning their daughter's wedding, finishing up a bid proposal, going on a beach trip. Somebody got a new grand kitty. So lots of cats going on here. Renewed their CPA license. Congratulations. Got all your CPE in. That's awesome. The Ravens won. Hopefully that continues not just in preseason where it doesn't really count, but into the season. A new puppy. The Orioles are doing great. I know that's making my grandma very, very happy. Celebrate their mom's 80th birthday on a cruise. That's awesome. So we'll keep on going, but thanks for giving me a smile in the middle of our day on a Monday. We want to see where everybody is representing the various paths that we have in our profession that we're grateful for. Looks like the race is on. Retired out in front, as always. We're jealous of you, but we're grateful for your continued involvement and leaving a legacy and wisdom for our great profession. Private company and public accounting firm are neck and neck there. Couple public company folks, nonprofit, government, outsourced CFO, client accounting services. We've got some others. So we'll have to see what we might be missing there and be sure to add that in the future. And then we always like to see your position or your level at work. I'm always just so impressed with the high level of MACPA members that we have engaging with us on these town halls. So senior management, C-suite, sole practitioner, managers, looks like a really great mix of pretty senior level people, and we're grateful for your involvement. I'll keep us moving. We'd like to continue to ask these questions. You see it's shifted a little bit with some of new items that we're seeing pop up as challenges or trends we're seeing in the profession. But we want to know, what are the top three challenges that you've been facing over the last 6 months? We always want to make sure that we are providing you with the resources, with the learning opportunities, with the communities that really support your professional success, and flipping these challenges to opportunities. So we see them shifting around a little bit. And it's interesting just watching the trends and how this moves. We have seen that finding talent and the retaining talent used to be way up at top. That's starting to come down. Hopefully that's the work of all of us to recruit and retain and really tell the message of this great profession with others. But there's still that need for skills to upskilling and reskilling. We're going to talk about something well, I would say it's new, but it's not really all that new. But talk about something that's one of those things we keep on hearing about, but what are the practical, how do we put it back, or how do we put it into practice now? Certainly cybersecurity, impact of inflation, and digital transformation. We've seen that kind of bubble up to the top again, now that hopefully maybe this talent issues are starting to resolve a little bit. But we got to keep an eye on it. Don't want to get distracted by anything and let that slip. One of our resource partners is the awesome team at CPA.com. And so I'm going to invite Todd Cooper, who is with us here, just to talk a little bit about some of the great resources that they have in facing some of those challenges and trends that you are.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rebecca. So as the business and technology subsidiary of the AICPA, CPA.com, we really focus on providing professional support to firms and organizations in really an array of areas, one of which will be what we're talking about today in ESG. And we've really broken that down into four foundational components, one of which the first would be ESG practice design. So whether you're designing it for your practice or within a department, within an organization, that's really building a customized roadmap to help better understand the ESG landscape based on market fit, latest trends. There'll also be thought leadership pieces in there, which will allow you to position your firm as a market leader through, curated and customized types of content. And service delivery enablement is a huge piece of that. So how do you gain access to essential resources to help the staff deliver those high value ESG services? And then the last one is really, tools for growth. How do you have access to sales and marketing templates, content, all of those things that you need to help grow this business? Those can all be found. It's a very easy website to remember. It's just cpa.com/ESG. And those resources are all there available for you at any time. But we really focus on really guiding the profession forward. We're at the tip of the spear when it comes to new technology that's coming into the profession and making sure that we're staying ahead of the curve. So I appreciate you having me here today.
Thank you so much, Todd, and for your partnership with CPA.com and the MACPA. Wonderful partners for, gosh, forever, I think, and just the amazing resources that come out of CPA.com, including, of course, Digital CPA Conference coming up in December. Really amazing event to kind of get some hands-on with some of those awesome technologies that our profession is exploring. With that, I want to introduce today's topic, and I did a little bit of a poll here to see, where you might be familiar with this topic of ESG. You heard Todd mention the resources that CPA.com has. I know AICPA also has a landing page that our speaker is going to talk about, but we'll let this jump around a little bit. Doesn't look like anyone's very familiar, which is okay because we have somebody that is very familiar on the presentation today. Somewhat familiar and very unfamiliar are winning. So I can guarantee you that we are going to explain what ESG stand for, and just really excited to bring this important topic that I think is going to shape not just our profession, but really is shaping our world and the business world in particular. into the future. And so just like we talked about generative AI in July, which is another thing that's certainly shaping our world and the business world, we wanted to bring you some information about ESG. And with that, I want to introduce someone that really needs no introduction. You probably recognize her from a lot of MACPA events. In fact, just earlier as we were getting on, she mentioned that one of her first conference presentation sessions was 12 years ago, I think she thought, on this very topic. So that's pretty telling. It's been around for a while, but now all of a sudden gaining a little bit more steam. But Jennifer Outer, we are delighted to have you with us again. Jennifer is an amazing speaker, a certified speaking professional, a CPA, a one-time Maryland resident. So we know that she bleeds those flag colors as well, even though she's up in the Northeast now. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can allow Jennifer to join us and talk a little bit about ESG.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. I am so excited to be here. And yes, we are revisiting this topic. Yes, it was 12 years ago at Business and Industry Conference that I gave a presentation about what is sustainability. So it's been around for a while, but it is becoming more and more critical, especially since the SEC has now made it mandatory. So it's mandatory from the SEC side. It's also mandatory from the IFRS side of things. So as regulators make it required, we start to pay a little bit more attention. And for those of you who said you're not familiar, you're not sure what ESG is, welcome aboard. We're going to get you started, and you may actually be more familiar with it than you think. In most cases, organizations are involved with ESG, even if they really don't know what it is. Now, investment in ESG type assets, companies that have a strong focus on ESG, was 30 trillion back in 2019, 35 trillion in 2021, and is expected to exceed 50 trillion next year. So it's gaining traction in the investment world as well as the regulatory world. So today I want to answer a couple of questions, but if you have any questions as I'm speaking, please feel free to type them into Conferences.io. Don't hold back. Happy to answer them. And Rebecca, please interrupt me when a question comes in. So yes, we're going to answer the question, what is sustainability versus ESG? What is driving the interest? What are the opportunities for ESG? And then how do I get started? Assuming I can inspire you with the first three answers. So Accenture is quoted as saying, sustainable organizations are purpose-led. They inspire people and partners to deliver lasting financial performance. So let's think about that word sustainable, long-lasting. But when we talk about sustainability, we think about it from a triple bottom line perspective of people, planet, and profit. So it's not just about being nice to the environment. So sometimes people say, well, I'm not a tree hugger. You don't have to be. That's okay. So comparing the two, sustainability is the broader concept. It's focused on the long-term viability of an organization. With, I think, the best definition of sustainability is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the future. So a simple way of thinking about it is recycling. Why do we do recycling? Well, it's because landfill, there's only so much room on the planet for holding trash. So recycling is a way of meeting the needs of the present, of disposing of your trash, but in a way that protects the future. And then again, it involves that triple bottom line concept. Is you think about It is a three-legged stool. If you put too much pressure on one leg of a stool, you're going to fall over. So it is about people. It's about being considerate of your community. It's about the planet, thinking about the environment. But if you focus on just taking care of people or just focusing on the environment, that's really more along the lines of philanthropy. And that in and of itself is not sustainable. We require more and more donors. So profit is involved. We need all of them. But when you focus on profit at the expense of your community or at the expense of the environment, oh, this will come back to haunt you. All it takes is one announcement in the news media, and your stock price can drop by upwards of 30% in 24 hours. So you look at things like VW's Dieselgate, that went on for years, and they cost them billions in settlement money. So not being environmentally friendly can have a negative impact on your profitability. Now, when we talk about ESG, that stands for environmental, social, and governance. So it's about respecting the environment, considering the greater community and the people that you work with, and it is the governance related to those areas, related to reporting and transparency. Typically, we talk about ESG when it comes to standards and metrics. So sustainability is the broader concept. ESG is how we report on it. So very often you'll hear investors or analysts talking about ESG, whereas an organization would talk about sustainability. So when it comes to the environment, it's thinking about what's your impact on nature and the environment in which you operate. What are you generating for waste or pollution? Are you using renewable energy? What resources are you depleting? And, I'm going to raise something that might be a little controversial here, is that a lot of people say that we should be buying electric vehicles. Well, there's another issue there. Yes, it's using renewable energy, but what do you do with the batteries when they expire? So sometimes deciding whether something is environmentally friendly or not is complicated. And sometimes we talk about it from cradle to grave. It's the whole process from what it takes to build a product and what do you do when you're done with it. It could be greenhouse gas emissions, carbon footprint, or even your use of toxic chemicals. The S stands for the social, and that's how you treat the people that you interact with and your broader community. It's about employee health and safety. It's customer relationships, stakeholder engagement. It's about your charitable giving or volunteering. It also includes diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it's a very broad range, under the social heading. And then we have governance. And that focuses on how an organization manages and polices itself. So it's thinking about your board, leadership diversity, accurate and transparent methods for reporting. It also involves fraud prevention and your accountability to shareholders. So the governance applies not just to the environmental and social, but it really is the organization's governance structure as a whole. And simply, I can say that ESG is generally used by external parties, and investors are looking at it to evaluate and assess your company. So for those listeners who said that they were part of a public company, this is becoming a much bigger issue for you. Is what do you report? What standards do you use? And how transparent do we want to be with that reporting? Because quite honestly, there are thousands of metrics that you could use. So how do we decide which ones we're going to report on? Some companies will report the exact same metric every year or every quarter. Other companies will shift things around. And then the question would be, why did you drop a metric? Is it because it went in the wrong direction? Or is it because this new metric is actually a better picture of what you're doing?
And Jennifer,
yes.
since you're talking about metrics, I thought maybe I'd ask this question that I saw come up a couple different times in different ways. It's really asking the question, who is setting the goals for these metrics, right? We can follow something trend-wise, but who sets the bar, the goals? Does that look different for different organizations? And then would we find the experts to quantify this type of stuff? We're the experts in the financial data, but what does this look like otherwise?
And that's why this is a complicated topic. 12 years ago, when I did that conference presentation, there were probably about 10 to 12 different sets of standards. We have started to see a condensing of those standards, and we had 4 of the top groups merge over the last 2 years. Ultimately, it started moving into the SASB. So we're used to FASB. There's also the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. That was acquired by the IASB, International Accounting Standards Board. So they are now one of the groups that is leading the charge to talk about what you should report on, how you report on it. There's also the Global Reporting Initiative. That's another set of standards. ISO has a set of standards. So there are quite a few out there still. Just like with our financial statements, pick a reporting model and be consistent. So you can look at them and go see which one resonates with you. So IFRS has just 2 basic standards that they issued that take effect for anybody using the International Financial Reporting Standards. They take effect January of this year. So that might be a simple approach to look at. Where you find people to do the calculations for you. There's another one, or I should say, what do you choose to report on? Or the goals. So I'm trying to remember all the elements of that question, Rebecca. How you set the goals. The first thing to do is look at what your organization has an impact on. So is it, if you are Coca-Cola or Pepsi, one of the things that they report on is water usage, because that's a significant impact they have on the environment, particularly globally. And while we don't necessarily have issues with access to water in the United States or in North America, there are other countries in the world that do. And at one point in time, the country of India was looking to, in effect, do a takeover of both Coca-Cola and Pepsi because of their water usage. So they were going to, in the US, we would call it eminent domain. And both companies got wind of this and went, wait, so stop. No, we are not stopping production. You're not taking over our factories. And they started doing more reporting on their water usage and how they could reclaim some of the water that they were using. So the goals are going to be set by the organization and their board. And generally what I tell people is start small. Start with 3 simple things. It could be electricity usage, water usage, could be trash. So one of my favorite stories about trash comes from Kraft Foods, where one of their manufacturing plants had a new plant manager come in. And one of the things he first noticed was they had all of these bins for recycling, and everybody was throwing things into the dumpster because it was too confusing. So what he did was he said, you know what, this is confusing for me too. He said, put pictures on the different recycling bins. So it's easy to look at. What do I have? Paper, cardboard, it goes here or here. Well, just by doing that, they dropped their trash. Originally, they were having to empty a dumpster 4 times a day. So 24/7 manufacturing going on. Within 2 months of putting pictures on the recycling bins, it went down to 4 times in a week. And then it became a competition because he started telling people the impact. So that's one of the ways to get your team on board, is to make sure they understand it's making a difference. So he started sharing how little they were having to empty the dumpsters. And within 6 months, they got it down to emptying a dumpster just once a month. Just once. So obviously that's a great story to tell to your investors. So think about, where is your impact? What would be easy for you to measure? Now, carbon footprint is, we hear about that with a lot of the large multinationals. That is complicated. That requires engineers to figure that out. So you would have to hire an environmental engineering firm to help you do that assessment. So that's, I think, what holds some people back on reporting. It's like, oh no, this is going to cost me way too much money. It doesn't have to. Just thinking about turning lights off. So putting in motion sensor lights in hallways, in restrooms, in warehouses. We don't need the lights on all the time. You know what your electric bill has been over the last several years. If you install those motion sensor lights, you'll watch your electricity bill go down. That's a metric to report on. So Becca, did I get to all of the pieces of that question?
I think so. I think that was a perfect, and it answered a question I didn't even ask that was on here that said, do you need to spend lots of money to have a strong focus on ESG? And it's not. It's very simple to get started. So thank you.
Yeah, and just reporting on charitable contributions, or if you have a volunteer day with your staff, that's part of the ESG. That should be reported. So ESG is the metrics. Sustainability is part of your business model. So I've talked a little bit about what's driving the interest, but let's go into a little bit more detail. Investors. So 81% of US and 84% of institutional investors plan on increasing their investments into ESG-friendly products. 60% of those institutional investors are saying that they're getting higher yields on ESG-friendly organizations. And 12% of individuals have switched to more sustainable company investments. Then we have the regulators. I know we don't like regulators, but it keeps us in business. We have a love-hate relationship with them. You've got 29 different countries that have some level of mandatory disclosures. In June of last year, I mentioned the ISSB issued 2 sustainability standards. They call it S1 and S2. Those are effective for years beginning in January of 24. Again, you may be not using IFRS, but that's a good place to start, is to look at what they're suggesting, because they are taking a reasonable approach to it. They're easing people in. And the UK, the European Union, is definitely far more focused on sustainability and ESG than we are in the US. So IFRS or IASB will be kind of leading the charge here. But in March of this year, The SEC did adopt mandatory disclosure rules. They were a little delayed. It was supposed to be issued in December of 23, but they were trying to figure out how they could do this in a reasonable way as well. Regulators also like it. There's something called a B corporation, and Maryland was actually leading the charge on B Corp status. And what a B corporation is, I don't know where, B stands for benefit corporation. It is a legal status, it's a form of corporation. And as part of your charter, you have to commit to public benefit. That's having a positive impact on society and the environment. And you have to report out to your shareholders and to the public. So the B Corp status came about when a corporation was sued by one of its investors for contributing too much to charities, according to the investor. So Maryland led the charge and said, no, that should be allowed. So love that fact. We also have leaders looking for it, in particular, your young leaders. This is a very important issue for Gen Z. 61% of young global leaders say that a business model should be profitable and improve social outcomes at the same time. 72% said that the risks related to climate change will affect their operations, their profits, or their costs. And I know these two little words are really a four-letter word now, supply chain. We don't really want to hear this anymore after COVID, but you're still feeling it because the Panama Canal is suffering from a drought. So there are ships stuck on either side of the Panama Canal that cannot get through. So some shipping companies are choosing to go around rather than through the Panama Canal, but that's obviously significantly more expensive as well as time consuming. And in Panama, they're trying to figure out what are they going to do in the long run if this drought continues, because they can only run about 20% of the traffic through the canal. So whether we can argue about the source of climate change, but it is impacting people's operations. Our employees want us to think about sustainability. 70% of workers and those looking for work are looking to see that their employer is involved with ESG. I've talked to a number of Gen Z people looking for work, and they said the first thing they do is they will go look at a company's website and they're looking to see what you say about sustainability. And they don't just want to hear you talking about it. They want proof. So if you say you contribute to your community, they want to see the picture of that check that you're donating, or they want to see the picture of you and your team on that volunteer day. And this is an interesting statistic. 49% of job seekers said they will take a lower salary to work at an environmentally and socially responsible organization. 49%. Pretty significant. And 90% of employees, when we talk about retention, say that a company's sustainability initiative improves their job satisfaction. It means that we can be proud of the company we work for. And we saw some of the numbers about investments exceeding returns from low sustainable organizations. But revenue growth of companies with highly engaged employees is 5 points higher than companies that don't have engaged employees. So if just announcing that you are going to work on sustainability engages your employees, there's a quick hit to your bottom line. And I think the number one reason at this point in time has to do with your clients and your consumers. Is that's really driving our revenue. And 30% of consumers stopped buying a brand because of sustainability concerns. VW not only had to pay billions in fines because of Dieselgate when they were found to be, they had a computer program that would fabricate emissions tests. The bigger issue for them is that they lost customers. And once you've lost a customer, it's hard to get them back. Far more expensive than finding a new customer, is trying to regain one that left. And 32% of consumers are checking whether a product is made from recycled materials. And then 33% will make a buying decision based on how much plastic is in the product. And this is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. In the last 6 months, there have been a number of environmental reports showing microplastics in drinking water. So microplastics come from just washing a plastic container. Some of it will degrade, and that's ending up in our drinking supply. We don't know the impact of that, but I don't know about you, not something I really want to find out about. And 79% of people in the US want to buy from brands that are environmentally friendly, but 85% don't know how to find those brands. So they're looking for some help, which means you have an opportunity to promote your organization, promote your product as being environmentally friendly. But also be wary, there's a concept called greenwashing, which is when you say you're environmentally friendly, but not so much. It's some of the ESG or sustainability reports I have seen are really a product marketing piece, that they're talking about how they have this environmentally friendly product. I can remember one of the first years that Toyota did a sustainability report. They have improved dramatically, by the way. They do a great sustainability report now. But one of the first ones I ever looked at was basically an ad for the Prius. So that was what we would call greenwashing. And out of our consumers, 77% of Gen Z, 72% of millennials are willing to pay more for products that are truly environmentally sustainable. Let me repeat that. They're willing to pay more for your products. That's a quick way to improve your revenue if your products truly are environmentally friendly. So, Rebecca, any new questions coming in before I go on to the opportunities? So far, so good. Okay. Well, the first opportunity is, I like to say, you can make green from being green. Couple of examples. Walmart, whether you love them or hate them, I love them for this example. We used to get, when we shifted from powder detergent to liquid, it used to come in these huge 2-gallon bottles. Well, Walmart did an analysis and said, you know what? The shipping of liquid detergent is one of the largest expenses when it comes to freight. And you were just pouring that into your washing machine, which means it's already got water in it. So Walmart actually talked to their suppliers and said, can we concentrate this? So now you get the smaller bottles that you're adding the soap to your washing machine. Your washing machine adds the water. And Walmart saved $18 million a year on freight. Small amount of money. Another example from Walmart came from an employee who said, you know what? in our lunchrooms that are well lit, we have vending machines that also have lights in them. And they're those little tiny light bulbs that would use a lot of energy, those high intensity bulbs. He said, what if we took the light bulbs out of the vending machines? That would save on electricity. Well, Walmart has a payment program to pay employees for suggestions that save money. And the way the payment program works is that they will give the employee 10% of the money that the suggestion saves. It happens over a year, and then you have to stay with Walmart for another year. Well, this suggestion of just taking the light bulbs out of the vending machines, they did the math, and it saved over $1 million in electricity costs globally. So yes, that means that Walmart employee got a check for $100,000. Can't imagine there are too many people at Walmart that make $100,000 a year. So the nice thing is that also increased the number of suggestions that they got. It was like, oh, this is worth something. A number of years ago, UPS wanted to save money on fuel, and they realized that not only fuel, but also carbon emissions. That when you have to make a left turn, you have to wait in traffic and you have to idle. And that uses up fuel, puts a lot of carbon into the air, which is why when you go to a drive-through at a bank these days, they ask you to turn your engine off while you're there. So UPS figured out that even though taking multiple right-hand turns may make the trucks travel more miles, it actually uses less fuel. So by taking no left-hand turns, they saved 1 million gallons of fuel per year, which was the equivalent of taking almost 5,300 cars off the road. So you can make money by being environmentally friendly. Allstate did something simple. They wanted to reduce their paper consumption. So what they did was they set all of the printers to double-sided printing. They also set it up so that on individual computers, when you went to hit print, you'd get a little pop-up that said, do you really need to print this? Just a little reminder. It wouldn't stop you from printing, but it would remind you. And as a result, they reduced their paper usage by 41%, saving $750,000 in paper every year. Not to mention the reduction in cost related to the trash. So every organization can look around and say, what could we do? How could we reduce our environmental impact? And if you're not sure, there's somebody at your organization who knows, and that would be your employees. Ask them. They have great ideas. That's why you hired them. They're smart people. So take their ideas in, say, what could we do? For those of you who are in public accounting, ESG can be a new line of business on reporting and assurance. So 2 years ago, I think it was, our attestation standards were expanded to include you can provide attestation on any standardized requirements. So whether it is the IFRS standards or the Global Reporting Initiative standards, you can do attest services. Apparently my cat likes the GRI better. Then you can also help with benchmarking. What should they track? You can provide advisory services. How do we get started? So once you get started, you help your clients get started. It's also a matter of looking at risk management. So sometimes when we look at ESG, you can say, in some cases, it can cost you money to invest in more efficient HVAC units. On the other hand, we can think about what's the risk of not investing? What happens if we have a problem? Another it's an older example, but Deepwater Horizon, the drilling platform that exploded in the Gulf. Somebody should have asked the question, what if the problem with that situation is they actually had 3 sensors, 2 of which said there's too much pressure building up. The third one said we were okay. And they decided that the 2 sensors were wrong. The third one was correct. And it actually was the reverse. And if somebody had asked the question, what's the downside if we don't pay attention? So thinking about what could happen and where are the opportunities? Can we reach out to our consumers? Can we generate higher revenue from an environmentally friendly product? There's also M&A opportunities. So with mergers and acquisitions, we do our due diligence on the acquisition. We've added due diligence on IT systems and cybersecurity. And now companies are adding ESG due diligence. They want to know what might be an issue, particularly for organizations that might have fuel storage. It's like, what happens if there's an underground tank? Has it been leaking? That could be an issue. Or manufacturers here in Vermont and New Hampshire, they're very focused on PFAS, which can leach into the water supply. And I will apologize for my cat screaming in the background. He's 19, he's deaf, and he's a little confused. So he yells sometimes. He was sleeping, and of course he has to wake up right when I'm doing a presentation. So with M&A, you might be asked to come in and look at what are some of the ESG risks? Are there some environmental concerns we need to think about? There are also a lot of tax incentives now, both federally, the state and local level. So your clients may not be aware of what is available for them. And then there are the renewable energy tax credits. And there is a whole marketplace now for buying and selling them. So for some organizations, they say, you know what? It doesn't make sense for us to get involved in renewable energy, but we'll pay somebody else to get involved. So it's not exactly the same thing, but it's still supporting renewable energy. And there's funding and grant money available for organizations that are taking on sustainability initiatives. In some cases, it is to implement new equipment. In other cases, it just may be funding at a lower rate because you are environmentally friendly. And then supply chain evaluation is you may be hired to investigate their supply chain and where might there be risks down the road. So in today's environment, your supply chain may involve you buy from one company, but they buy from another who buys from another. And do you really know who's the original manufacturer and what are they doing? And it's very easy for reporters to do some digging here and suddenly surprise you with a microphone underneath your chin going, did you know that the supplier to the supplier to the supplier is using child labor? That's happened a number of times. And that puts you back on your heels. You're having to scramble and say, I didn't know. And that doesn't look good either. So there are lots of opportunities here, both for organizations to start adopting sustainable practices and for CPA firms to start helping their clients adopt sustainable practices. So if you wanted to get started, what should you do? Well, the first thing is do something internally first. If you're a CPA firm, you can't go out promoting sustainability if you are not doing something yourself. So it's walking before we run. The challenge is that sustainability is not one size fits all. Different companies will do different things. So what I think is really valuable when it comes to adopting ESG is thinking about what's your sweet spot, which would be where are your business interests overlapping with the societal and environmental interests? What can you do? So, for example, a CPA firm, you may actually be pretty environmentally friendly. You may limit your printing. You may do the recycling of paper. So what else can you do? Well, an easy one would be to have a volunteer day. So that benefits your employees, benefits your clients, and is something you can promote to potential customers. If you are a bottled water manufacturer, donating your water to a charity run would make business sense as well as supporting your community. So it's trying to find that overlap of where it makes sense for you. Second thing to do is take a look at some sustainability reports that are already out there. A couple of good ones to look at are KPMG. Timberland out of New Hampshire was one of the first companies to do a sustainability report. And they are very transparent in that they use the same measurements all the time. And they actually will point out when they've gone backwards, when a trend is not going in the right direction. They are transparent about it. And then they'll talk about what they're doing about it if they can. In some cases, they just have to say, there's nothing we can do right now. We're doing the best we can. Nike, HP, Toyota, all of these companies have good sustainability reports. Now, they're pretty substantial. So if you're a small entity, don't worry. I have seen a sustainability report that is 1 page, and that's fine. It can be more of a letter to your shareholders or to your customers. You can also take a look at reporting frameworks like the GRI I mentioned, the Global Reporting Initiative, the International Sustainability Standards Board. There's also the Carbon Disclosure Project. And I believe, Becca, that somebody had mentioned NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology. They don't have a set of standards themselves separately yet, but they are consulting and providing some information to companies. ISSO is also working on a new set of sustainability standards as well. So there are various standards out there. Even for small companies, though, if you're not going to do a large external report, I wouldn't get too wrapped up in the standards. It's more about thinking about tracking your own KPIs. So it might be water usage, waste, electricity usage, contributions to charities, things like that. So just talking about what you're doing to let people know. Because the more you talk about it, the more you will do it. The more your employees will do it. The more your customers will love you for it. So kind of success breeds success. You can also go to the AICPA. They have a part of their website is devoted to sustainability resources. So you can take a look at that. And I know, Rebecca, you said that you did a session on AI in July. Well, there's something you can ask ChatGPT to say, I am a consulting firm. What are some initiatives that I can take on in the ESG area? So you can get some ideas. You don't have to go this alone. So that's a quick overview of ESG and how to get started. It really is simpler than you think. So I encourage everybody to get started. And Rebecca, what remaining questions do we have?
Yes, thank you for that, Jennifer. I think that was very encouraging to me as we think about even MICPA and what we should be doing from a sustainability standpoint, obviously. One of the questions actually was about nonprofits, and specifically what from a requirement standpoint do you see happening for nonprofits? Obviously, that SEC and IFRS doesn't apply to all small firms, small business, nonprofits, but where would you say a nonprofit should start?
Well, we just saw, like I said, the SEC putting out their rules, and it kind of trickles down over time, goes from public to private to not-for-profit. Governments are sometimes ahead of the game because the regulations come in quicker sometimes to governments. So I don't see anything happening quickly in terms of requirements. However, that doesn't mean you wouldn't benefit from thinking about it, because it would demonstrate to your donors that you are a well-rounded not-for-profit, that you are not only thinking about your mission and the impact that you have, but think about a broader perspective of improving the community as a whole. So I think it would also resonate with your donors to let them know we're not just about trying to alleviate homelessness, but we are also thinking about the environment as well. So if somebody's trying to choose between charities, I'm probably going to donate to the one that is really thinking about a bigger impact.
Absolutely. And as we saw over the last couple of years, the talent being the number one concern of a lot, and we saw some of those things start to shift, but we heard earlier from you about how important this area is to talent. And so it's a recruiting tool in a way as well, right? So so many opportunities. We did have one last question, and I imagine it's similar to what you just spoke about, but the sole practitioner, like where would they get started and how would they really champion this within their organization, even if just one person?
Well, as a sole practitioner, and I am a sole practitioner myself, so I can look around and say, what can I do? So as a sole practitioner, if you wanted to include something on your website, you could just list simple steps that you're taking. You could say, I don't print unless necessary. When I print, I use double-sided printing, or I use the reduced print setting. It can be very simple things. You can talk about the charities you support. And I know for a lot of CPA sole practitioners, they will donate their services to some not-for-profits. So you can mention that as well. So it doesn't have to be sweeping. And a sole practitioner is not going to calculate their carbon footprint. That's okay. But it's just thinking about the little steps that you can do, that you're using recyclable materials, that you're not using styrofoam or paper plates and cups in your office. Things like that. It can be small. People appreciate every little step that you can take. So you don't have to get deep into the weeds. You don't have to download the whole GRI proposals or standards. Just think about the little things that you may already be doing.
Those little things that often make big differences, right? The small things done by a great number of people certainly are impactful. So as we see, Maryland has led in other areas. I challenge our profession, our members here to start leading in this area with just the little things. And we are so grateful, Jennifer, for you joining us virtually this afternoon to talk about these things, to give us some thoughts about where we could do to start to make progress. So thank you. Thank you all for tuning in for our August town hall, and we look forward to seeing you in September. Another hot topic, and we will see you then. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rebecca. It was my pleasure.